Welcome to Living Well with MS, the podcast from Overcoming MS for people with multiple sclerosis interested in making healthy lifestyle choices. I'm your host, Jeff Alex. Thank you for joining us for this new episode. I hope it makes you feel more informed and inspired about living a full life with MS. Don't forget to check out our show notes for more information and useful links. You can find these on our website at overcomingms.org/podcast. If you enjoy the show, please spread the word about us on your social media channels. That's the kind of viral effect we can all smile about. Finally, don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favourite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. Now, without further ado, on with the show. Today's podcast is different to every other one that we've had so far in that we have two guests and we're going to have a discussion about advocacy, and joining me today is Alison Marwick and Helen Rees Leahy. And I'm going to get Alison and Helen to introduce themselves. You may be familiar with Helen. She's actually already been a podcast guest. I believe it was season 2, episode 30 off the top of my head. But there's a podcast already about PPMS with Helen. But to start off with, would you like to, well, firstly, welcome, and could you introduce yourself, Alison, or Ali?
Thanks, Jeff. Delighted to be here on this podcast today and talking a bit about advocacy. So my name's Alison, or Ali Marwick. I have remitting multiple sclerosis, and although was formally diagnosed 10 years ago in September 2011. I had my first known episode in 2004, so I've been living with the disease for the past 17 years. I am fortunate in that I found OMS within about a month of diagnosis, and which was great, because during that period I was probably depressed, having going through that grief cycle of being diagnosed and not really knowing what to do. But I was physically well, I was mentally well, but I had this, what I felt was, a hideous disease, and that my life was over. So finding overcoming MS within a month was hugely empowering, and gave me so much hope, and it enabled me to really take steps in my life that I had been afraid to do that before. I had been told in 2004 that I probably had MS, or it was highly likely, I think they phrased it, but I pretended that it wasn't there, and I just was living in denial and in fear. And what OMS gave me was that ability to not be fearful anymore, to have hope that I was able to manage my life, and that it wasn't over, and I could do all the things that I wanted to do by following the programme, and to have great health outcomes. So that's kind of my story in terms of OMS and how I found it. And ever since then, I've been passionate in wanting to support the organisation, support other people who are following the programme or looking and interested in following the programme. So I've been an ambassador for Surrey, which is where I live, for the last 3 years, which has been hugely rewarding. And, we've got an active circle here, which has been great fun, and, helping and working with others who are following the programme.
Excellent. So also joining us is Helen Rees Leahy, as mentioned. So Helen, could we have a quick intro from you?
Hi, Jeff. Hi, Ali, and hi, everybody. Thank you very much, Jeff, for asking us both to come on to talk about advocacy today. I'm Helen Rees Leahy. I was diagnosed with primary progressive MS in 1997. So I've been living with MS now for nearly 25 years. And as I had a diagnosis of primary progressive from the outset, I have had a course of increasing progression of my illness. I discovered OMS a long time ago, actually. I mean, I think it was something like 2008 when Professor George Jelinek published one of his very early books outlining the bare bones of this OMS program. And I seized upon that. I have never been eligible for a disease-modifying therapy under the UK NHS system. So I've always been managing my MS through my own actions and agency. And like Ali, discovering the Overcoming MS program was a tremendous support for me, and indeed has supported me throughout my time, my life with MS, and continues to do so. So I think I'm very touched by what Ali says about, overcoming fear and anxiety. That's something I'd like to come back to, I think, in the course of this conversation, the importance of the program, not only in, enabling us to lead very healthy lives as we possibly can with this condition, but also the emotional, the mental, the psychological support that it gives us in terms of becoming less fearful, becoming less anxious about our conditions. And that's very much, I think, at the core of the advocacy initiative, the ways in which we can really realise the goal of empowerment for ourselves and for each other as a community of people living with MS and following the OMS programme.
And could we start out just as a basic? What is advocacy to start off with? I think a lot of people won't have heard the term too much. So could we just define advocacy and the types of advocacy as well? Who wants to take this one up?
I'll kick off, but okay. Ali, I know will come in there as well. Yeah. I mean, that's right. It's perhaps a rather abstract word. We relate it, as I was suggesting a second ago, very much to our strategic goal of empowerment within OMS. And really what it is, it's making the case for the OMS programme. So if you think about it this way, I think as an organisation, we're very good at information. If you go onto the website, there's a massive information about the programme, how to implement it, your questions are answered there. But we know that living with MS is challenging, and convincing other people of the benefits of following a programme like Overcoming MS can also be quite challenging. Maybe it could be family, friends, it could be your healthcare professional. They don't always understand the programme. They don't always see the benefits that we ourselves perceive from it. So it's making a persuasive argument, and it's finding the words and the confidence to make the case for following the programme, sometimes in perhaps what might be quite difficult or challenging situations, where you need to, as I say, be persuasive. It's beyond information. It's a process of persuasion. And as I say, we can do it for ourselves. We can also do it for each other as well.
And Ali, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think there are two key words there that Helen referenced: empower and confidence. Giving people the tools, the techniques, and the confidence to be able to talk about their own diagnosis, talk about their own choice to follow the programme and the benefits that that's shown. We know from the community engagement survey data that was, we're currently trawling through as an organisation, that a lot of people struggle with talking to healthcare providers, talking to their friends and family. But having your friends and family on side is a huge support network, so really important. And we know that having the confidence and the ability to be able to articulate what it is that you're doing and why, and not have to be defensive and constantly, people going, oh, go on, just to have a wee bit of cheese, or whatever. So it's about, we want to enable people to have that confidence, to have that ability to have those conversations in any environment, whether it's friends, families, healthcare professionals, work, those sorts of areas. But we recognise that we maybe need to provide a few more tools, techniques and support in order to be able to do that.
Absolutely. And I think but anyone who's got MS and following OMS, I think, will be familiar with this. I think I consider myself very lucky in that my neurologist is very supportive. But yeah. I've certainly heard many stories of, is it fair to say old school neurologists, maybe, more traditional, if you like, who really are very much of the opinion, you take the medication and you live life. Literally, I think the phrase did come up, you've got MS, you don't want to make things any worse, than just enjoy life while you can. And it was some really cutting remark like this I've heard. but actually, when you look at some of the top neurologists, who fortunately I've sort of been in touch with some really leading neurologists, they are almost entirely of the opinion that lifestyle is a factor, and living a healthy life will have an effect on your MS prognosis. So there is definitely, if you've got an up-to-date, if you like, neurologist, they seem to be very pro the OMS approach. But yeah, there are still some more traditionalists, and equally person to person as well, because I think all of us will have come across someone who, I think you said, oh, why not just have a little bit of cheese? And that is absolutely the case with some people. And again, I feel very fortunate. My family and friends are generally very supportive, but it still happened. A little bit won't hurt, sort of argument. So how is advocacy particularly important to the OMS community then, and to the broader MS community?
For me, that's all about individual and collective agency. So when any of us has a diagnosis of a condition like MS, as Ali was saying, that can be very devastating, can't it? And people, of course, react in very different ways. But it's a profound change in anybody's life, and in fact, it can be a very, very traumatic period for people. But what the OMS program does, it's not only a toolkit to enable us to lead a healthy life. It's also a means of recovering our own personal agency, of taking control, of feeling there's something that we can do, and in time, perceiving the tangible benefits of following the program. So for me, it's that process of taking control, which I think is so incredibly powerful. And that is why we believe, of course, the Overcoming MS program is so valuable in all of our lives, and combined elements of it are kind of more than the sum of the parts. So I think we know this as individuals, but perhaps as a community, we haven't been quite as clear in articulating that within the MS space more generally. So I think it's about, within the OMS community, becoming more empowered, connecting with each other, and as I say, becoming a stronger voice for the program within the MS space. So as you say, Jeff, with a healthcare professional who's a little bit skeptical, with a family member who, is perhaps questioning, why somebody with OMS needs to have time and space for meditation or stress reduction, why family food might need to change. So I think it's about increasing confidence, increasing empowerment, and doing this collectively. We're not expecting, it's not a magic wand that any one individual can do this by themselves. So it's one of the ways in which we want to become more connected as a community as well.
And how can you advocate by using your own experiences? What approaches have you had for that? Could I ask that to Ali?
Yeah. So I think a lot of OMSers are naturally advocates because and you've had many of them here doing podcasts and talking passionately about how following the program has transformed their lives, and as Helen said, not just from a physical perspective but from a mental perspective, and how they feel about themselves and their own empowerment. So we can all be advocates just by talking about our own experiences. And Helen, I'm sure, experiences this as well. But when I, meet new people and, having food in a restaurant or something, and it was like, oh, what can you eat? Why do you do that? I'm like, well, this is why. And I've lived with this disease I've had a diagnosis for 10 years. I've followed this program for 10 years and I am in remission. And everyone's like, wow. And they get, some people want to know more. Some people are like, oh, difficult subject, don't want to talk anymore. But I think everybody can be an advocate what we're not saying here is everyone has to be, but I think by default, just by having conversations with your family and with your friends and by living your life, and people will see that there's something there that you've got the confidence, you've got the ability, and that you're managing your disease. Helen, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Ali. And I think the only thing I would add to that is, for me, it's, as you say, our own kind of personal stories can be very powerful. And there's an idea which is becoming increasingly accepted and talked about within healthcare systems here in the UK, but also in other parts of the world as well. And this is the idea of experts by experience. It's the idea of the so-called patient being a kind of co-creator of their own kind of treatment plan and path, and acknowledging that alongside the medical model of medical knowledge and research, there are other forms of insight, knowledge and understanding which come from the lived experience of an individual and a group of individuals. And I think this is particularly true with kind of chronic conditions such as MS. For me, it's more than just our own individual stories. It's actually reflecting on what we learn from those experiences, and actually looking for what we have in common. Because we know, as we've said in this conversation already so far, each of us has a very distinctive experience of MS. And sometimes that can actually seem as though, well, your experience is nothing like my experience. Let's put those differences to one side and focus more on what we have in common, what we learn, what we can learn jointly, and, as I say, acknowledging both our vulnerability but also our agency. Our vulnerability, I think, is what we get from MS, and I think our agency is what we get from OMS, from overcoming MS.
And just as an aside, I mean, I find a lot of people who follow OMS, and certainly myself, people always say you look really healthy and you look really well. And I've heard that from a lot of OMSers, that people are always commenting how well we look. And I always say, well, yeah, apart from the obvious, then yeah, I do actually feel, I think it does actually, my sort of lived experience is that I am definitely healthier, apart from the fact I've got MS. And that my healthcare providers are on board with that, and they said, yeah, no, it's you're living a really healthy life. You're doing exercise. You're eating a whole food diet, which is good. Stress reduction, good. All those things are good things. It's not we're not doing some sort of really weird, out there sort of unusual remedy. These are fairly well-founded, healthy things to do.
Well, I think that's exactly right, Jeff. And if you had diabetes or a particular heart condition, much of the kind of advice that we follow in OMS would be, recommended to you by your healthcare professionals without any question at all. It's orthodox, it's standard practice. As you said a few minutes ago, unfortunately, lifestyle management, let alone overcoming MS, isn't yet a kind of standard prescription for people with MS. But you're absolutely right. Of course, and you also said something interesting a moment ago about, well, you've got MS, so why not enjoy life? Which it kind of implies that somehow following the OMS program, robs you of enjoyment. Well, far from it. I think instead of thinking of it as a sort of rules-based sort of diktat, which is somehow a constraint. In fact, of course, as you say, it's a foundation to be free and to lead a good life, a healthy life, and, of course, to lead the best life we can with MS.
And Ali, have you got a point as well on that?
Yeah, no, I would add to that. Just going back to your comment, Jeff, about people tend to comment that OMSers look well. I think the key thing, though, is that OMSers know that there are so many hidden aspects of MS. So you may look brilliant, you may, your skin, your hair, everything might be great, but you could be in a lot of pain. or suffering from, well, one of the many things that we know that are hidden to the wider world. So I guess, one of the things that we do bring to bear in these kind of conversations is that, yes, we know that the health, the lifestyle and is great, and people comment that physically we look like what they can see, we look well, but actually those of us who live with the disease know that there's lots of hidden things there as well. So we're not dismissing that, but acknowledging it, and working on helping people in who are struggling in some of those areas as well. So we're not all running marathons and all that kind of stuff. It's about empowering people wherever they are with their disease, and where they are physically and mentally, even if everybody thinks that we're all fine.
Yeah, we're like swans. We look great on the surface. We're doing an awful lot of work
Yes.
Underneath.
Absolutely. But, and to Helen's point, I agree. I don't think that following OMS is a burden. I don't know, if somebody told me I could eat meat tomorrow, I'm not sure that I would. My life is much more enriched. I've had more confidence, I think, as a person to be able to do things, but I never thought prior to diagnosis that I would do. I guess I've taken life by the horns a little bit more than I would have done before. And certainly living those years between 2004-05 and 2011, I lived in fear, just waiting for the next relapse to happen. I made some lifestyle or life decisions that I've completely reversed since following OMS, because I'm not afraid anymore. And I think that's, giving people their hope back is such an important thing with OMS.
And so we've talked about advocacy a lot, and there's now an OMS advocacy group. So what is the advocacy group, and why is it important to have this group?
So we created the advocacy group at the start of this year, the start of 2021. And the importance of it is precisely that the goal of empowerment needs to start at home, i.e. within the OMS community. So with all this discussion about advocacy, we're very clear about this guiding principle that it must be a kind of community-led initiative. So from the outset, we wanted to have the voices of OMSers around the table helping us to start the conversation. And I would certainly want to emphasize that we're still very much at the beginning of this work, which is why it's so great to have this conversation today, because we hope it might be a spur for more people to join in the conversation. So far, the advocacy group has met, I think, 4 or 5 times. It's a small group of OMSers, and we've really been just trying to kind of unpack this, just what we've been doing today, really, just what this word advocacy means and what might it mean in practice with OMS. So I think the advocacy group is important because it's an initiative which is being led by OMSers. And as I say, we're certainly not complete as a group. We're small gathering so far. So if anybody's listening to this podcast today and would like to become more involved, either by suggesting they might want to join the group, we meet every couple of months on Zoom, and or contributing to our advocacy thinking in any other way. If I may just say, Jeff, as soon as this podcast goes live, also going live will be a new advocacy page on the Overcoming MS website. So if you're on the website and you type in advocacy, or if you're on Google and you type in Overcoming MS advocacy, you'll land on that page. It will give a bit more information about where we are so far. And there'll also be a kind of contact info there. So you'll be able to get in touch with us if you'd like to be more involved in it, or find out more about what we're doing. And we'd really, really welcome that. As I say, we think sort of empowerment has to start within OMS, and we're really determined that we sort of put that principle into practice.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Helen, I think it's key for anyone that's listening that we would love people to join the group, because we we do need more members. But also if you feel that joining the group is too much of a commitment and you don't, you're not comfortable with that, but you want to share something, share an experience, for OMS, the advocacy model we're seeing as being in three parts. So self-advocacy, being able to talk about it yourself, to your friends and family; peer, so talk to other MSers or OMSers; and collectively as an organisation, out to healthcare providers. If you have stories or if you've got something that you want to share with us, you don't have to join the group, but we're keen to hear. We're, as we mentioned earlier, we're looking at the community engagement survey that so many people responded to over the summer, which is great. And there's huge amount of data in that around how people feel empowered or not, some of the challenges that they have. And, so there's some data and information that we can use that. But if you haven't shared with us some of your experiences and you feel that, it's something that the organisation needs to be aware of because it could help other people, then, the call to action is for those as well as, other individuals to join the group.
And if someone's not comfortable with joining a group, whether they don't have time or they're not comfortable with sharing, is there resources for people to help them with their advocacy journey?
Definitely. Well, she says, definitely there will be. There will be. What we don't want to do is sort of go off and design those resources by ourselves without talking with our fellow OMSers. So that's exactly what we're planning to do. And as Ali says, people can contribute to that process in all sorts of ways. So what we're aiming to do, and it'll be something which I think you'll be able to see sometime in 2020, we want to take it carefully. We're developing resources which will specifically be there to support people in, as we're talking, making the case, perhaps giving them some tools and tips for perhaps quite tricky conversations when you're talking to somebody who's a little bit skeptical or resistant to your own kind of commitment to overcoming MS. So, for example, some of the resources we might have might be frequently asked questions. We might play out some different scenarios, how to cope with challenging or tricky conversations. We'll have things like conversation starters. How do you kind of begin to talk to different people, family, friends, colleagues, healthcare professionals about this? If you're going to see a healthcare professional, be it your family doctor or hospital neurologist or MS nurse, for example, how might you prepare for that encounter? How might you prepare for that meeting? How might you begin to talk about overcoming MS with a healthcare professional? And I think that can be quite a challenging meeting in some respects, because we know that our expertise is the expertise of lived experience. And as we were saying a few minutes ago, that's neither better nor worse, but it's very different from sort of the medical model, from medical expertise. So we need to be clear about the insight and understanding that we bring to the conversation based on our lived experience, and how that can communicate and become a conversation with a healthcare professional. So we're thinking about these kinds of resources, and that's sort of really a first step. So yeah, that's where we're thinking at the moment. But as Ali says, where we're really beginning is also a process of information gathering. So looking really closely at the community engagement survey data, which is fascinating. And we might just take this moment to thank anybody and everybody who's listening who participated in the survey, because really, your responses are providing really for the first time, I think, for overcoming MS, a statistically robust sample of data and findings which are telling us so much already. And we really want to root this initiative in that lived experience of the OMS community.
And could I ask what what do you think success would look like? How do you measure success, or what do you expect to be a successful outcome of the advocacy group in OMS?
Do you want to have a go at that, Ali?
Yeah.
Over to you.
So success. So we're going to measure success in a number of different ways. And I think we're going to, we need to look, there's the global success and OMS being everywhere, but that's going to be quite a way off. So let's look at it. We're going, the community engagement survey is going to be done on an annual basis. And so we will be using the empowerment questions that are part of that to see whether or not we've shifted the dial on how empowered people feel and how in control they are, how confident they are about talking to their healthcare providers, how supportive family and friends are. So we're going to use that as a mechanism to be able to measure. But that's going to be another year before we do that. So obviously we're not going to just sit back and wait to see what the results are. I think other success factors are going to be about how many people engage with this process that want to get involved. We're going to look at success with some of the material that's going to be created in terms of, as Helen said, talking to healthcare providers, preparing for those kind of conversations, how many of those items get downloaded from the website, what the kind of conversations are across the forum and the website, and looking at generally, how many more people are finding it, finding the confidence and the empowerment. So we've not put together specific key KPIs, success factors at the moment, not wanting to be too corporate about it, but because we are right at the very beginning, but we are, we're looking at, well, what do we want, what's success going to be in the next 6-12 months before we move into really accelerating this further down the line.
And Helen, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think Ali outlines that very well. Again, if you're listening to this and you think, okay, I know something that would be a good measure of success, let us know. As I say, we really want this to be very much informed by anybody and everybody within the OMS community. So as Ali says, we're reluctant to pin things down too hard and fast too quickly.
So with that, I'd like to thank you very much for joining us on the podcast, and also encourage everyone to have a look at the OMS advocacy page, and wish you every success for the OMS advocacy group. So thank you very much for joining us, Helen and Ali.
Thanks a lot, Jeff, and thank you for giving us this chance to wave the advocacy flag. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Living Well with MS. Please check out this episode's show notes at overcomingms.org/podcast. You'll find all sorts of useful links and bonus information there. Do you have questions about this episode or ideas about future ones? Email us at podcast@overcomingms.org. We'd love to hear from you. You can also subscribe to the show on your favourite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. Living Well with MS is kindly supported by a grant from the Happy Charitable Trust. If you'd like to support the Overcoming MS charity and help keep our podcast advertising free, you can donate online at overcomingms.org/donate. Thank you for your support. Living Well with MS is produced by Overcoming MS, the world's leading multiple sclerosis healthy lifestyle charity. We are here to help inform, support and empower everyone affected by MS. To find out more and subscribe to our e-newsletter, please visit our website at overcomingms.org. Thanks again for tuning in, and see you next time.